This video tutorial is going to look at creating a moving vehicle. You could change this to anything really. Doesn't have to be a moving vehicle, but we're going to create something that works out pretty much like this here. So I've got my little racetrack. I push up on the keyboard, the car accelerates, and it goes around in circles like that. Now what I don't have at the moment is any kind of collision, so I'll do that. And essentially what I'm going to do is make that slow the car down. So I'm not going to actually make it stop. There is a reason for that. If I make it stop or bounce off it, it'll kind of go a bit weird and jerky. So let's get down to it. Now, I've made two sprites for this. One is called Sprite Test Car, and I'll just put that back to where it was. And the other is just a wall object. Now you should be able to make these by now. Test car I made 64 by 32 as my height. So when I went new, 64 by 32, and I just drew a very basic car in there. This is just an example. You don't need to get a car sprite. Just make it a box if you want. Mine's a police car, and call it Sprite Test Car. Test wall is just a 32 by 32 sprite, and I'll click OK. Same with the objects. The test wall is just solid. That's all that it is. And then the test car. Now for this car, I'm not going to go through and create it from scratch. I'm just going to explain how this works. The first thing I want to do when I create the car is set the friction to something. Okay, I've got it set to 0.3. Now this is where changing this value will make different things occur. So let's set the friction to 0.1. You see it's going to take a lot longer to slow down. Also, my turning is a bit weird at the moment. It's going to take a lot longer to slow down. So the lower the friction, the longer it's going to take to slow down. If I set the friction to 0, it's never going to slow down essentially. It's just going to keep going forever. So I set it to 0.3. And this is something that prototyping, you're going to need to record for that. So why did you choose 0.3? What other values did you check if you decide to go this way? Then I've created a variable. Well, actually this variable already exists, direction, but I'm setting it to 0. So I'm making sure that this object is facing to the right when it starts, because that's where my car is facing there. If I had my car facing upwards, I'd make sure that the variable direction was set to upwards. Set max speed to 8. Now this is the maximum speed that my car can go, and after testing a few values I found that 8 was the best one for it. So I've just created a variable called max speed. It's set to 8. So that's my create area. If I go into the step event, this is very simple. Okay, very simple. All I've got is on the main 2, under the sprite options, I've got transform sprite. Now it says standard here. That means that it can only be used with the standard version of Game Maker, which you should have. You might not have this if you're working on it at home. If you are working on it at home, you might just want to wait until you come into school to do this particular step, because there are ways to do it in the free version of Game Maker, but it's a lot more convoluted. So this here, transform the sprite, I basically leave everything except direction. Now normally it comes in an angle as 0, but I want to set the angle of the sprite to be whatever the direction is. And direction is a variable that holds a number from 0 up to 360. So we started it at 0, but the step, whatever direction the sprite, the object is facing in, we're going to change the sprite to also face that direction. And so when I push the left key, I'm going to set direction to direction plus 4. I could also just do this by doing it relative. So typing in 4 and making it relative. So when I push the left key, keyboard event for left key, variable direction is increased by 4. Now right is pretty much the same thing, except direction is relative to -4. So I'm decreasing the direction by 4. So if direction is at 0 and I push the right key, direction is now going to be 0 minus 4, which will be, well, -4. But that'll transfer it into degrees, so it'll be like 356 or something. So it'll be kind of pointing down to the right. And up When I push up, this is when I want it to accelerate. But here's my little trick, because I'll just delete this bit. I'll just cut that out. So up, move in direction. So I've got move free here. Move in direction at speed. I'll make it speed 0.8, I think is what I had it as. Relative. Now just to test this out without the bit that I had there, you'll quickly see that it will just accelerate really fast. But if I put that bit back in, if speed is smaller than max speed, so if speed is smaller than max speed, I got that from here, check a variable or test a variable. So if the current speed, and that's a variable that's built into all objects, is smaller than the maximum speed, you remember at the start I set the maximum speed to 8. So if it's smaller than that, then I'm going to set the direction, to direction, and the speed to 0.8 relative. So it's going to keep increasing the speed. If the speed is already at 2, then when it does this, it's going to be at 2.8, and then 3.6, and then 4.4, all the way up until it's about 8, or it might be 7.6 or something. And it can't go any higher because it's at the maximum speed. And so what happens is I get, you can see, I get up to my maximum speed, and it's working fine. Now, there is a problem with this. It might look okay when you see it here, but when you're actually playing it, it feels really weird because it's rotating. If I just stop the car, you can see it's rotating around that back wheel, which just seems really, really odd. It's kind of rotating around this point here, just here, because that's where the corner of the sprite is. So what I'm going to need to do is exit out of here, go back up to this sprite, and change the center of it, or the point that I want it to rotate around, to somewhere else. Maybe I actually want it to rotate around these back wheels, just kind of here. Okay, I can click center, and it'll rotate around the center, but it's probably more realistic for it to rotate or have the center of the car slightly at the back, like that there. So now when I rotate, you can see it's rotating around a different axis. So it's kind of rotating around here, rather than in that corner. So I can change that position that it rotates around. I might just click center, and you'll see that when I rotate it, it should rotate right around the center here, which is fine. Alright, now collisions with this so that we don't just drive outside the wall. First of all, add event, other, intersect boundary. When it does that, I'm going to make it stop completely. So speed 0. So let's just check what happens now. Oops, it stops. And it's kind of crashed when it goes in there. I might make it intersect boundary and reverse direction maybe. I'll flip that in a minute. Or I could do this, wrap screen, intersect boundary, wrap screen. This can bring up its own problems. Where did it go? That's weird. Wrap screen, oh, both. There we go. So it comes off, it goes off one side, it comes in the other. So that's one way to solve that problem. But we are going to do add event, collide with test wall. When it does this, what I'm going to do is check, or I'm going to actually change a variable. Variable max speed is going to now equal 2. So I can drive my car, going pretty fast. Hit the wall, and it stops, which isn't exactly what I wanted it to do. So let's just... Okay, so I figured out what the error was. You'll want to turn this off solid. Okay, so we don't want it to be solid in this case. And then when it collides with the wall, set the max speed to 4 so that it slows down. Now this is going to work, I might just set it to 2. Oops. So object test wall, set the max speed to 2. And you'll see it significantly slow down when I hit one of these walls. It slows down. But then once I get off the wall, it doesn't actually speed up again. So let's go into here, object test car, step, and we'll check. Let's go to control, check object. We'll check for the test wall at 0, 0. So is the sprite, is the car touching that wall, or not touching the wall in this case? And if it's not, we're going to set max speed back to 8. So now when we run it, max speed is currently at 8. I touch the wall and I slow down a lot, but then when I leave, I go back to normal speed. So I touch the wall, I go really slow through it, and I've got pretty simple racing movement. If I go outside, well, I got rid of the bit where I go outside, but I could make it so that I come in the other side. So what can you do with this? You could make a game where you're a tank, and then when you move through the trees, you slow down. When you move over mud, you slow down. You could make a racing game. You could make a helicopter game. There might be clouds that you move through. You slow down when you go through those clouds. You could make a space game, going through a meteor field, and you slow down. There's lots of different games that could be made using this movement system. So I've just put in a very simple driving game here. There's not even any checkpoints or anything. I just go around in circles and I can't exactly win. But there's lots of stuff that could be done with this. I could have things that boost it. For example, if I go to sprites, I'll just create a sprite, SPR boost, edit sprite, new sprite, we'll make it 32 by 32. Oops, I'll get rid of that. And let's just fill it with that. Fill it with orange maybe, or red. And let's draw some lines on it. Draw some thick lines like this and like that. Okay, so tick, there's my boost. Create an object. And I'll make it not solid. And I'll put some of these boost objects in here. And let's go back to the car, add event, collision, boost. And what I'm going to do is max speed is going to be 12. So if I touch the wall, the max speed goes down to 2. If I touch the boost, it goes up to 12. So let's test that. Oops, it's above it. But going around here, I'll just make sure that they are below the object. What I can do with that is make sure that this is at minus 100. The lower the value, the higher up it's going to be. Okay, so I'm slowing down, I get around to here, and then I get a bit of a speed boost, and so on. So that works really well. Sorry that it's constantly in the bottom right of the corner for you, so I go slow when I hit those walls, and I go down like that. So a racing game, you know, I could make it spacebar, shoot bullets out the front. We'll look at shooting and stuff later on, and we'll put it all together fairly soon. So once we get some of these skills down, we'll put it all together and we'll actually make a few different games. Now, if you want to do this in code, stick around. Otherwise, you're free to go on to the next video. So I'm going to look at creating this in code now. And I'm just going to duplicate this here. OBJ test car code. And click OK. I'm going to open both of these up. So I've got one as a reference. And this one here, I'm just going to remove this car from there and add in my code one. So this is my code car. I can close that room now, I don't need it. yes. There's my code car. This is my other car. And let's delete these. So when it's created, we're going to have a code friction equals 0.3 and direction equals 0, max speed equals 8. So these are all things that we just want to declare at the start of our program. Make sure that these variables work. These two show up brown, friction and direction, because they're inbuilt variables. Max speed doesn't, because it's a variable I've created. Then on the step event, we're going to have, I think it's SPRIT, to have a look at what it might be. Okay, let's bring up the help. Search, transform, oh, I know what it is. I think it's image angle. Yeah, that's it. Image angle equals direction. Now I'm looking at this one here. So image angle equals direction. If place underscore meeting x, y, and now I'm actually going to check if it's meeting that object wall. You see it turns a different color because that is an object that I've defined. So if it's meeting or not meeting the wall in this case, then I'm going to get it to do this stuff in the brackets. So max speed equals 8. Now in here, I am also can write this a few different ways. I'm going to say if it is meeting the wall, I'm going to make it equal to 2. Else, if place underscore meeting x, y, obj boost, then max speed equals 12. And then finally, else, and I don't need a condition for this, it's just going to happen if the others don't work, max speed equals 8. So what this is saying, if x, y, there's an object test wall, so if I'm colliding with the test wall, max speed is equal to 2, else if place meeting x, y, object boost. This x, y is the x, y of the car object that I'm working with. Max speed equals 12, else max speed equals 8. Pretty straightforward. Then I'm going to do my left and right and so on. So I'll do keyboard controls. You see how it's a little bit different when you're doing it with the script. You can do pretty much everything in the step command rather than have a whole lot of different options down here. It is up to you how you do it. You can write script individually, but then it's kind of pointless. So if keyboard underscore check VK left, well, direction minus direction minus 4, and that should actually be plus 4 for left in this case. If keyboard check VK, right, you might think that it's actually meant to be minus 4 because normally when we move left it's been minus 4, but this is because we're working with a circle, and so it starts off facing right at 0, and then when we go plus 4, it adds 4 onto it until it's upwards at 90 degrees. So if we want it to rotate to the left, we add to it. And then I'm going to go direction minus 4. That should be it. And then lastly, if keyboard check, move this up, keyboard check VK up, we want to make it, what do we want to make it do? Speed plus, speed equals speed plus 0.8. If speed is less than max speed, then we're going to do this. Okay, Okay, so if the speed is less than the maximum speed, then we're going to add it. Otherwise, we're not going to add any speed to it. Now this should all work, and I'll just check and delete all this other stuff. Let's just check. So I'll double check to make sure that this is my test car code. It says it down the bottom there, so this is the right one. And hopefully it won't give me an error. Okay, yeah, looks like it's working. I go there, it's slow, faster, hit the boost, and I go even a little bit faster. So that was the code portion of it. As you can see, most of the code is fairly straightforward if you've ever done any kind of programming before. I'll just bring that up. So declaring variables is very simple. And then stuff like this, what you will be doing, it's pretty much just if statements. So the way that an if statement works is you have if, then the condition that you want to be true. If that condition is true, it's going to do the things inside these curly braces. So these are called braces, not parentheses. Parentheses are the curved ones, like this here. And brackets are the square ones. So inside these braces here, it'll do this. So if that condition is true, it's going to do that. Else, and else only occurs if that condition is not true. So then else it'll check this condition. If that's true, it does this. Finally, if neither of those conditions are true, it does this here. And then we've got keyboard checks down here. If that keyboard check is true, then we do that. If that keyboard check is true, we do that. If that keyboard check is true, and if the speed is less than max, then we do that there. I could combine these into one, so I could actually do this. And speed is less than max speed. And then we could do this here. And that will still work. It's just different ways of doing the same thing.